Mike Pinkston informed the committee that the Tree Commission preferred that the gazebo be named after the Rotary Club and the park return to the name Frost Park to honor Mr. Frost's investment to the area. Hayes motion for the law director to draft legislation renaming Fort Ball Rotary Park to Rotary Club of Tiffin Centennial Park. Snee seconded the motion, and the motion carried 2-0. With no other business, the meeting was adjourned at 6:05 p.m. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions regarding that report? All right. Materials and Equipment, Councilmember Jones.
No report, Madam President.
Personnel and Labor Relations, Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, thank you. There is a Personnel and Labor Relations report this evening. A meeting was held in City Chambers on June 9th, 2025. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss a letter dated May 30th, 2025 from the Tiffin Fostoria Municipal Court regarding a new part-time position of Community Service/Diversion Officer. Attending were committee members John Hayes, Dennis Snee, and Kyle Dougherty. Also attending were Mayor Lee Wilkinson, Law Director Zachary Fowler, City Administrator Nick Dutro, Tiffin Municipal Court Judge Rhonda Best, Council members Scott Horniman, Aaron Jones, and Cheyenne Thacker, and from the public, Keith Hodkinson and Mike Pinkston. Hayes called the meeting to order at 5:15 p.m. Hayes introduced the request and referenced the part-time wages budget item in the municipal court's budget. Judge Best detailed the responsibilities of the new role as well confirmed that the part-time wages line in the court's budget is the intended fund for the position. Hayes motion for the law director to draft legislation creating the part-time position, and Dougherty seconded. The motion carried 3-0. With no other business, the meeting was adjourned at 5:43 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions regarding that? Councilmember Thacker.
I just want to suggest one change because I'm on that committee and Dennis isn't. So switch our names.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Recreation and Public Property, Councilmember Snee.
No report at this time, Madam President.
Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers, Councilmember Thacker.
No report at this time, Madam President.
Thank you. Economic Development and Downtown Planning, Councilmember Horniman.
No report, Madam President.
Thank you. Does anyone see the need to schedule a committee of the whole meeting? All right, we are under reports of the officers. His Honor, Mayor Lee Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I'd like to wish all the fathers out there happy Father's Day for yesterday. And starting next week, periodically, there will be a sidewalk rerouting and on-street parking spaces closed in front of 160 South Washington Street as work begins on the renovation of the old Gibson Hotel. So that will be going on for about a year. Periodic closures to the sidewalk and the on-street parking just right in front of that building. And just 3 weeks from now, we're looking forward to the 4th of July events coming up at Hedges Boyer Park.
It's crazy to think about.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Clerk of Council, Ann Forrest.
No report, Madam President.
Director of Finance, Kathy Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of things for this evening. I wanted to tell council about the suspension for this evening, ordinance 2025-55. That is to appropriate $8,000 additional into the finance budget for refunds. We have spent $3,500 already, and that is only through April. I just got the May information today, so I'm hoping that from May to December, that $8,000 will get us through the rest of the year. And these are processing refunds for ambulance payments that were maybe made in error or made quickly, and they did not need to owe all of that. So our ambulance processor, they go ahead and they process those refunds on our behalf, and that comes out of their money. So then we owe that money back to Medi-Cal. So that's what that is for. And I also have your report for the financial report for May 2025. Total receipts for the month were $5,176,972.83. Total expenses were $5,515,394.95. The general fund unencumbered balance is $5,643,992.65. Income tax receipts for May 2025 were $940,854.14. The total increase in income tax receipts in May 2025 compared to May 2024 was $29,723.13. The annual increase in income tax receipts is up 1.99% year-to-date. The 0.25% portion of income tax receipts that was transferred into Fund 215 for public streets for May was $114,490.89. The portion of income tax receipts that was transferred into Fund 331 for capital improvements for May 2025 was $80,492.58. The unexpended balance for all funds is $42,789,127.10, which is the same as the bank balances for the same time period. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to accept the Finance Director's report, month ending May 2025, and bank reconciliation.
Thank you. There's a motion to accept the Finance Director's report for the month of May and the bank reconciliation. Is there a second? Councilmember Hardeman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. And Director of Law, Zach Fowler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to give kind of a little bit of background on the mobile food vendors license ordinances. I know there's some, I think, questions or confusions over what's being proposed, maybe what's currently on the books. So as it stands right now, Chapter 723, which is the mobile food vendor regulations, that was passed by this council back in 2020. And I think there was some maybe public misunderstanding that what's being proposed is adding the fees. The fees currently exist. So as it stands at the moment, if you want the permit to operate the mobile food truck or vehicle, what have you, the application is a $50 fee. That license is good for a year. But if you're going to operate on city property, then it's in those spots designated by the city administrator, and there is a location permit that carries a $25 a week fee that is good for up to a month. So I think there's some confusion over, is the city saying you got to take out a permit for being on, say, private property, and that's not the case. If a mobile food truck wants to operate out of someone's private property, sometimes you see them at one of the box stores like a Lowe's, for example, they can do that. They still need the permit from the city. They still got to do the $50 application, but there's no $25 a week fee from the city. That's only out of city property. So there's a couple of spots designated by the city administrator and some parking lots for the city. But there are some others that are occurring. So I know, I think it's Madison Street, right, Nick, that is doing, they're going to operate from on-street parking. So that he's going to be paying the $25 a week for that, because that's going to fall under city property. So that's what's on the books. What was being asked by basically the fire chief was some language change to bring the city ordinance closer to what the state fire code is or will be. But then we also added just a few little extra things that are not really anything material. It's more some definitions, purpose, a little bit more explanation on what, say, the city administrator could do as far as revoking a license or suspending a license. But the fees are not being proposed to be changed unless you change something through this process. So just a little background for everyone. That's all I have.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Sure.
All right, we are now under written communications.
We have mayor's request for legislation, number 25-32, license agreement for use of city-owned infrastructure by Bascom Communications.
Thank you. Mayor's request for legislation, number 25-32, will be referred to the Recreation and Public Property Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 25-33, Labyrinth Project bid at Hedges Boyer Park.
Thank you. Mayor's request for legislation number 25-33 will also be referred to Recreation and Public Property.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F25-21 to amend the 2025 Budget Ordinance 24-94 to appropriate funds into the Finance Department budget.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F25-21 is prepared tonight as ordinance 25-55.
And we received notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control concerning a TFOL or temporary facility or location permit to the KFC Home Association, 49 East Perry, transferred from Diamond Crown Incorporated, doing business as Gold Crown Restaurant.
Thank you. This will be referred to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
And another notice, excuse me, from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control for a Type N with special restrictions permit to Ralph's Appliance, doing business as Ralph's Joy of Living, 33 North Washington Street.
Thank you. This will also be referred to the Street, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee.
And that concludes the written communications.
Thank you. We are now under oral communications. Anyone wishing to address council may step to the podium, sign in, and direct their questions to myself.
Good evening, Council. My name is William Alford. For those of you who don't know, just a little bit of backstory. I'm the majority owner and founder of B&E Barbecue right here in Tiffin. I've been a resident of Tiffin pretty much all but 4 years of my life, where I served in the United States Marine Corps. I'm a current member on the foundation of a Dress Right Dress as well, nonprofit organization. Married to Jenna Alford, nurse practitioner out at Mercy Hospital, and we have three wonderful sons, Bowen, Nash, and Easton, and that's where B&E comes from. So just a little bit of backstory on me. Obviously, I'm here today. Caught a little bit of wind last week of some of the changes, possible changes to the food vendors license ordinance. So I just had a couple questions about the verbiage that was proposed. And I'm not sure if it's just a dialogue or, I propose what my questions are and then
Yeah,
you speak. Okay.
absolutely.
I'll try to stay in order here.
No, I appreciate that.
72304B, Section 8. There is a line that says, any other information deemed necessary by the city administrator. I would just like clarification on what specifically that is, and if there are certain or anything that is being looked for considerably, that we could have that in writing. That way we know and understand what we're trying to look for, or what you guys are trying to look for when you come out to the truck or trailer.
Yeah, Law Director, yeah.
Hey, Bill.
Hi.
Dude, so proud of you. Bill and I
you.
grew up together, and so very happy to see you. So that's as to the application. And that's just gives discretion if the city administrator thinks there's other information that needs to be on the application that's kind of reasonably necessary, he can put that on the application. And that's existing language that's being carried over to the proposed changes. So that just gives him some discretion. If there's parts on that application that he thinks he needs to include, he can do that. But that's just on the application.
Okay, so there's nothing physical that actually coming out to inspect or look for, that we already are regulated by state and federally. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, that would be correct. So everything that, What this is referring to is allowing us, and let's say we needed to make a quick change to the regulations, or needed to, I don't want to say quick, but a change to the regulations. This gives us a little bit of authority to do so. But those would all be spelled out on the application. We wouldn't put anything, we wouldn't have a requirement that's not part of the application.
Okay, and then we would have, when we reapply for that in the year, we would have that time frame to get those fixed if it was anything that we pertain to us specifically or any specific food trailer or truck. Is that correct?
I think what you're referring to is anything dealing with either the health code or the fire code. That would be something that we don't necessarily have control over. That's part of the health code or fire code.
Okay.
But anything that would be on the application, we would, if for instance we were making a change to that to the application, we would give as much notice as possible for that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you can't come out on site while we're trying to serve, the community and then, try to drop something out. That's not the purpose, correct? That's.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is not typically how we do it, but that's fine. I just wanted to let you know, part of the reason that we're now going toward the I-Roll program, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Many communities in Northwest Ohio are going to this. There's communities in Michigan that use the same. It's to create a standard across the board so that a company that is located in Toledo versus a company that's located in Sandusky versus someone here in Tiffin, we have a standard rules across the board.
Correct.
That's what we're trying to make sure that we're following.
Okay. Well, great segue, if we will. How far are we off from I-Roll from Seneca County? If anybody can answer that, do we know that?
I think this goes, I'm sorry, Council President.
Yes, thank you.
This goes to, I think, those changes in the state fire marshals, or the state fire code that we are trying to implement or that we are trying to be more in line with. I'll tell you that right now the fire department is trying to have everyone register for I-Roll currently. So they are going to follow the I-Roll plans, even though it is not our rule necessarily. We will be following the I-Roll. And they're following that currently. So for those companies that might have a hood system on their truck, they need to make sure that is inspected and that is properly cleaned in the same way that any brick and mortar restaurant would be in the same situation.
Sort of follow-up question on that, please. Now, we just registered less than 2 months ago for the rest of this year. What does that pertain to for someone that's already done it for the year of 2025?
You're good for the year of 2025 until this will go into effect so that the new cutoff date would be, I believe it's May.
March?
March 1st. So you're good until March 1st on that.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. The next section that I had was 72305C, Section 1. On property used exclusively for single-family residential purpose, irrespective of the zoning classification, city administrator may authorize an operation of mobile units in non-public property zone location areas zoned residential in conjunction with private or public events otherwise permitted by the zones. The city administrator shall place a reasonable regulation upon such operations. The mobile food vendor shall operate before 10 a.m. and after 10 p.m. or not after 10 p.m. So my major concern with that one, and again, I don't know how this applies to every food vendor. Obviously, with B&E barbecue, we smoke, and that takes a considerable amount of process. It's a 10, 12, 14, 16-hour process at times. So my question is, after the 10 p.m. rule, is this just going into sales as a vendor on itself or operation in general?
Sure. Yeah, so this was, so under the locations, what's happening under here is to say mobile food vendors can basically operate in any of those kind of same districts like any other business can operate. But we also know that, so that doesn't include residential zoned areas. But we also know that there's going to be times where there's certain events, graduation party, for example, that you may be asked to go out to that's in a residential area. So this was trying to carve out an exception for that. As far as that time period for operation, to be honest, this came straight from, I think, the city of Norwalk. This was their time frame. Whether council wants to pass that or change it, they could mirror the same general operating hours. But to answer your question, yeah, it says operation, right? So the idea would be 10 PM, that's when things go down. I think part of that's the idea is you're in a residential area. And so maybe that ends earlier than, say, if you're in a downtown business area where there's not as much residences. But that is certainly a thing that through this process, if council wants to give more latitude, they're more than welcome.
And again, that's just for operation. It's not for the, the vending side of it and the sales side of it. I mean, obviously, we would have a lot more volume, movement, loudness, I guess, if you will, after 10 PM. So, I mean, that's completely understandable if an event is not going on around town. But specifically for operation in general, that was the main concern. The next one that I had was 72305B, which, Zach, thank you. A lot of that for me was as far as city or the private lot, which you've addressed earlier in the meeting, so thank you for that clarification. And I think the last thing that I have is I didn't see anything within the ordinance about ServSafe. So for anyone that is not familiar with ServSafe, it's a leading food and beverage safety training and certificate program administered by the National Restaurant Association. What it does, its primary goal is to prevent foodborne illnesses by educating food service professionals on best practices for food handling, preparation, and overall hygiene. And that's just a summary of its core purpose, the key certifications and programs that you can maintain as an operator. And I think I think everybody has the same goal here, that the citizens, within us, we all keep everybody safe. That's the biggest goal. So I think if we could add something in there about ServSafe certificates along, even if it's from the health and safety stand side of it, everyone should operating a trailer, food truck, mobile should have some type of certificate along that way. And if there's no questions for me, that's all I had for this evening. I thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Thacker.
I just want to thank you for taking time and coming up and speaking with us. And I appreciate your comments and questions because I think it's good for all of us to know, right? It's good for all of us to be on the same page and know what exactly does this mean, what doesn't this mean. Some of your specific questions, I had some questions about too, and I hope, through the process of, part of the reason we have 3 readings is so that this happens, right? So that we can have conversations with the community in a very open way and get on the same page and get the same information. So I just appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for coming. But I want to go back to a question that you had earlier, just for clarification, for my own clarification, on the single-family residential purposes. The before 10 a.m. and after 10 p.m. Because I know in your business, you smoke the meat for hours.
Correct.
Overnight.
Correct.
And that's part of preparation, but that's not actually vending operation.
Correct.
So if I was reading this, I would think that the smoking part of that operation would be okay to continue into the night, overnight, but clarify that for me if I'm reading that incorrectly. The vending operation is, I think, what's being restricted from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. so that you don't have a bunch of people lined up in your neighborhoods.
Right, that's what I was asking clarification for mainly, just that, the operation stand side of it. There are some times that we will do a breakfast smoke and offer brisket or homemade bacon, scrambled eggs and that as a platter. I don't know if that's something that can be thrown in or amended for, a specific time if it's approved, prior approval from the city. That's usually a big hit for us. So, and I think, our citizens have taken well to that, and it's went over really, really well. So, but that's, other than that, it was just clarification on the operation as opposed to vending.
Okay.
Councilmember Thacker.
Sorry if you have to answer. Mine's off base, something else.
Okay. Yeah, if you'd like. No, that's a great question. Yeah, so on 7/23/06, and this is also current, is vending operating hours starts 6:30 a.m. and then rolls over until 2:30 a.m. the next day. So for general purposes, you have that. If you're in residential, this is added into as that special exception. So I would agree with the mayor's interpretation that I think I'd probably be instructing the city administrator. It's the vending side that obviously we're concerned about, as opposed to just the preparation.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Councilmember Horniman.
I just wanted to thank you for coming out and being very well prepared. It was, I really appreciate it and everything like that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Thacker.
My question is about, you referenced, I thought you said at the end, 7/23/05B. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Regarding serve safe?
No, the ServSafe, there's nothing written from ServSafe.
Got it. So when you were referencing that, you were talking about, those questions were addressed. I just want
That
to make
was
sure we're on the same page.
correct.
Does the health department mandate that you do serve safe? No,
I don't believe so.
not for
I think
mobiles.
that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
There-
I don't
there's
know
lo-
if we have any, I don't know where sometimes there are things that we are allowed to legislate and things we are not. So sometimes I'm curious, in a situation like this, is it really under our purview to deal with serve safe, or is that under the health department?
I probably would have to look into it, but the off the cuff is, it's probably one of those general laws that the state's already taken up that you couldn't add in. Not to say you don't put it on the books and nobody challenges it, okay, but generally speaking, the state's already regulating the area of food safety.
Yeah, I had to do it too. I was a server, and the restaurant I worked at, I did it.
There's levels or certificates as
Yeah.
well. It's not just an overall general, there's levels, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
Really
for your time.
Appreciate your time, yes. Does anyone else have any commentary from the public?
Hi, thank you. I'm Tina Shank, owner of the Bagel Buggy Taste of Tiffin. I just wanted to say this is 9 seasons that my truck has been in business. And I operate all over Ohio, gone to Tennessee, North Carolina. And honestly, Tiffin's policy is the most vague of any other policy. For example, I mean, I have license in Toledo, I have license for Findlay, for Fostoria. All of those are an annual fee. It's less work for the city. Findlay, I pay the annual fee. I mean, and even in their policy, which Tiffin doesn't have, it has, if you are found not abiding by the regulations, it has, it includes, you'll be charged with a misdemeanor of whatever degree. Tiffin, what happens if you get caught in Tiffin? Setting up in the city lot and you haven't gone to the city administrator and paid your $25 for the week. Nobody in Tiffin enforces it. Fostoria and Findlay both list all of the food trucks that have completed the applications, that have paid their fees. So everyone knows what food trucks are allowed to operate within the city. I mean, I just feel like it would be a whole lot easier and better for the city administrator to not have to do it weekly. I did. I mean, I've got my book. Last year, I paid the $25 7 times between January 1st and April 15th. So, I mean, just as a food truck owner, I feel that would be the most logical. It would be the easiest. Also, the parking spots that are marked off, the city could use those spots. City Lot 7, those 2 parking spots are marked food truck only. How often does a food truck park there? Shouldn't the brick and mortar businesses around there be able to use those spots if a food truck isn't coming? So, I mean, should the city know if a food truck is coming? Absolutely. But does it have to be, like I said, 7 times last January through April, I was in Nick's office with my permit and my $25. But I know that there were other trucks set up in that spot. They never paid the $25, but they sat there and served the entire time. So I guess I just feel like there should be more checks and balances as far as the food truck policy goes. There should be, a list, of food trucks for the city of Tiffin that have passed all of their inspections, that have, paid their annual fee. So that's my thought, my feeling. Like I said, this is 9 years I've been doing it. And there are municipalities that do require with the application our Serve Safe certificate. There's also a municipality that every person that works my food truck has to have a background check. So, I mean, some municipalities are a lot more strict. And I'm not saying that Tiffin's not. It just needs, if we're going to have these ordinances and these regulations, I just feel like they should be followed up and enforced. I mean, I guess is what I'm trying to say. At those spots, those 2 spots in City Lot 7, my truck is with my generator on the front. Hopefully this summer I'll be able to make the $7,000 and rebuild the one that's on. I won't have the generator on the front, but with my generator on the front, my truck doesn't fit in those spots. So up until April last year, I had gone out to the city garage, got a couple cones, so I waited until late night if I was going to be setting up there in the morning, and I would put the 2 cones in the 2 spots next to the 2. So to parallel park my truck in those spots the way that they're set up, I needed 4 spots. So I would park, I would move the cones, people could park there. I could get out, but I couldn't parallel park it into the 2 spots with the way that they're marked. And I just feel like if we're gonna have spots marked like that, shouldn't they accommodate at least the local food trucks? I know Bill's truck trailer won't fit in those spots either. So I mean, what, can something be written or something be done about that? So then, I put my cones out, paid my permit for the week, went to park and my cones were gone. I couldn't park there. I paid my $25 for the week, but I couldn't park in those spots because there were cars parked there. So that was the last time I've set up in the city of Tiffin. Because there was nothing that could be done. So that's my view on the food truck policy for the city of Tiffin.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your commentary and your, I apologize for your frustrations. We certainly want more businesses here and all the business that we can have in our community to serve. So thank you for your commentary, and obviously we'll be discussing this, more for council, but I'm not sure if anyone specifically has questions, but definitely we'll take what you said to heart and into consideration.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Of course, yes, Councilmember Doherty.
Thank you, Madam President. Ma'am, I really appreciate you coming here as the chair of this committee. What's one thing we're doing wrong here? Is there something that and I think I speak for everyone on council, no one here owns or operates a food vending business. And I want to be clear that we're trying to make this as easy as possible and as streamlined as it possibly can be. What can we do to help you two out that maybe we're not seeing?
I think you guys do a great job, and I appreciate what all of you guys do. But I think when the policy was originally rewritten in 2020 and the spots were marked off, that was also done by someone that didn't have a mobile food business, didn't really know anything about food trucks. And I think that's kind of where it started. I mean, like I said, parking is an issue downtown. So having designated spots that are marked off for the last 5 years, I don't think is a wise thing to do. And I know I've talked to Nick about this before. Also, the way that spot's set up, against the building, my serving window is on the passenger side. If there's a Saturday morning, I had a line of people. Well, my window is right in the line of traffic. So it's a safety issue with the line at the food truck window in the line of traffic in the parking lot. I had said 2 spots in the middle, like the 2 spots right next to the 4 handicap. If a food truck is coming, couldn't we mark off those 2 spots? That line would be in the marked spot of the handicapped, so it's not in the line of traffic. Also, those spots can be used by customers for the downtown businesses if the food trucks aren't coming, if there's not going to be a food truck there. Also, I've got copies of Finley's food truck application. I've got a copy of Port Clinton's food truck application. I guess look more into what other municipalities are doing. Don't look at Port Clinton's. They're the one that everybody has to have a background check. With my application, everybody had to submit a 2x2 photo, and then the city makes like a plaque that has to be hung in the truck when that employee is working. Theirs is way outdated. I don't think that's necessary. But, just kind of look to see what other municipalities are doing successfully with the food trucks and having, a list of approved vendors, I guess is kind of what I'm trying to recommend.
Yep. Law Director.
Yeah, maybe just give you a little insight. We do have a list. Part of that's because we get all the applications. Enforcement, I think, has been one of those of sometimes it's police, sometimes it's city administrator. It is a misdemeanor if you're not complying or you are operating.
Is that listed in the, I'm sorry.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It is. But one of the things that is being proposed to be added is to give a little bit more administrative power to the city administrator, to more clear ability to revoke or suspend a license if they're not doing that, or to deny an application. So if somebody is operating without it and then they want to apply, city administrator have that discretion to even not approve it. So we have both kind of an administrative function that we can use as well as criminal if really necessary. So we do have it. Whether it's being well enforced, that's a different discussion. But just to answer your question a bit, we do have some of that.
Thank you. Councilmember Thacker.
I too wanted to thank you for coming in and taking time out of your busy schedule. Just curious, how many spots would your truck typically fit in?
It would, if it was the center, if they were spots that are like.
That you can pull through?
End to end, I could pull right in. I would need 2. To parallel park it along that wall, I could do it in 3. I'm more comfortable with 4.
I have a question for Tina. Have you ever been in a city where they allow the on-street parking, and have you ever parked in on-street parking, and does your food truck fit in those on-street parking spots?
Actually, I was just in Cary on Friday night. They allow on-street parking. And that, I was like the 2 end spots. So I took 2, and then I kind of pulled my generator over the front line a little bit. So I guess to answer your question, it would have been 2. But I didn't have to parallel park into it is the thing. So I guess that's my issue in City Lot 7, is parallel parking it into that with just those 2 side-by-side spots. And on the street, they're longer, whereas in the lot, there's the skinny, you pull in this way. Whereas on the street, you pull in this way, kind of like you do the center of City Lot 7. Does that make sense?
Yes. I don't know if you want to allow it, but Billy has a question.
Yeah, I was going to get. Yeah, go ahead. That's okay. You can come on.
I think, real quick, 2 things. I think iRoll will immediately take care of your first concern. That is the purpose of iRoll. And as soon as we can implement that, it's better for everybody. The second thing on the parking, I believe an easy solution to that is when you are filling out or submitting for the $25 application, you let city administrator know the footage that you need, and that should be prepared ahead of time, by the time you get there, as long as you're accurate with the information that is needed. Because like she, alluded to, I'm up to almost 46 feet now with my truck and trailer. It's a site, and it's big. So, while we're submitting for that fee, we could simply, say I need 44, 46 feet, and that's what should be given if permitted. So
Thank you for that. It's very helpful.
But I mean, we're all here just to, keep our lights on and, keep our homes, whatever. So that's why, but like you said, it's frustrating when, 7 times I submitted my application, 7 times I paid that $25, when people were parking that exact same spot and not paying the $25.
Sure.
Weekly, so.
Absolutely.
But it is, after hours when, downtown businesses don't need those parking spots, I guess. I don't know if that could be a difference, in enforcing it and not. I don't know. Just my 2 cents.
No, very much appreciate your feedback. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Councilmember Doherty.
Yeah, Bill, Tina, I just want to say I really appreciate you coming here. You've given me a lot of insight on things that I wouldn't otherwise have known. Someone who's actually operating a mobile food truck. I just want to say, as Cheyenne said, that, taking your time out to come here and speak with us, I really do sincerely appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you guys very much.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us into motions. Are there any motions this evening? Okay, we are now under resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 2025-30, introduced by Kyle Dougherty, a resolution renaming Fort Ball Rotary Park to Rotary Club of Tiffin Centennial Park.
Thank you. This is the first reading of Resolution 25-30.
Ordinance number 2025-49, introduced by Aaron Jones. An ordinance authorizing the city administrator to sell a 2015 Chevrolet Silverado 3500 to Tiffin City Schools and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 25-49. Councilmember Jones.
I move for passage of ordinance 2025-49.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 25-49. Is there a second? Councilmember Reesner.
I'll second, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Jones.
Like the council clerk had mentioned too, this is just the sale of a no longer used vehicle to the Tiffin State Schools, and they are replacing it with a improved model.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll first vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Doherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Doherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-49 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-50, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance 24-94 to appropriate funds into the city administrator's budget, the WPCC budget, and the general administration budget.
Thank you. This is the third reading of ordinance 25-50. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for passage of ordinance 2025-50.
Thank you. There's a motion for passage of ordinance 25-50. Is there a second? Councilmember Herniman.
I'll second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the passage.
Councilmember Doherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-50 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-51, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance adopting a tax budget excuse me, for fiscal year 2026, directing the Director of Finance to deliver the budget to the Seneca County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the second reading of ordinance 25-51.
Ordinance number 2025-52, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance 24-94 to appropriate funds into the police, fire, WPCC, and municipal court budgets.
Thank you. This is the second reading of ordinance 25-52.
Ordinance number 2025-53, introduced by Kevin Reesner. An ordinance amending Section 4 of the 2024 Budget Ordinance 23-94 to create Fund 451 OPWC Lone Street paving and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the second reading of ordinance 25-53.
Ordinance number 2025-54, introduced by Kyle Doherty, an ordinance to amend Chapter 723 of the codified ordinances.
Thank you. This is the second reading of ordinance 25-54. Councilmember Herniman.
I'd like to make a motion to amend ordinance 25-54, Madam President.
Okay. To amend to?
I would like to amend to remove the $25 weekly fee for operating on city property.
Okay, there's a motion to amend the $25 weekly fee while operating on city property. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam President.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Herniman.
Thank you, Madam President. Just with the discussions that we're talking about and everything, we talked about the I-roll system. That's a $29 fee. The food truck vendors already have to pay $50 to get their license. They have to pass their inspection through the fire department. They have to pass their inspection through the health department. I just think the $25 fee, and we've heard that, the varying enforcement of it, and I just think the $25 fee is like, I don't think it's so much a dollar amount, it's really an extra hoop to jump through. I mean, I really think with this ordinance in general, we can kind of, make a statement that, doing business in Tiffin is not difficult. It's open and we can be flexible. And, part of that, I think just adding an extra layer for them, I just think removing that $25 fee will be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Is there other discussion? Councilmember Dupree.
I'd just like to reflect on Mr. Horniman there. I just personally would like to be as business friendly as possible to folks that are operating a mobile food vending operation, and if we can do that by waiving the $25, I'm certainly in favor of that.
Law Director.
Just for clarification, Councilmember Horniman, when you say take the $25 out, are you still asking to keep the location permit in there? It's just
Yes.
there's no fee for the permit?
Yes, there's no fee.
Any other discussion before we vote on that motion? Councilmember Hayes.
Yeah, just from the comments we just heard, I mean, it sounds like the $25 fee is already getting waived by some trucks themselves. They just, pull up and operate anyway. So I was just kind of curious from the city's perspective, are we okay waiving this fee and then it's just first come, first serve? But then does that kind of lessen the requirement? And now we're, somebody just showing up and parking, they don't have to pay, they don't even thinking about the fee, or, I'd be curious if.
Mayor.
Sorry, I just want to address that. I still don't think it's first come, first serve. They still have to go to the city administrator and get a permit, and he has to approve their location. But waiving the fee doesn't have anything to do with them getting a permit. They still need a permit. They still need to check in with the city administrator. It still has to be approved. The fee is just another one of those things that is kind of a sticking point, but causes friction between some of the food vendors and some of the other ones, because some of them seem to be able to park and get away with not paying the fee, as Tina suggested, and others play by the rules. They come in and they pay the fee. That's not an equal playing field. Not really fair that way. But they all need a permit. They need to check in with the city administrator, get their location approved, and get a permit.
Councilmember Herniman.
Just to clarify, I mean, if they're operating, either they have a sidewalk permit or they're operating on the street, they still need to have the permission of that adjacent business owner or own the business themselves. So, that would, as far as if they're operating out front of a business or on a sidewalk or something, they don't have to pay the fee, but they still need to get the permission of the person who the adjacent property and such, so that they're not just rolling up wherever they want to and just setting up, and you have to still keep that section where you have the permission of the business owner. It's not like a free-for-all where you can just pull up in front of any business you want and just open up your food truck.
Councilmember Thacker.
I just have maybe a point of information question regarding this to the law director. If we remove the fee, is there anything that says if somebody does not have if they don't have a permit, what the repercussions are? Does this fall under that potentially they could lose their license or whatever? I just want to be sure so that people are like, well, there's no fee. Why am I going to take time to fill out the permit if there are no repercussions?
Yeah. Great question. So, yeah, you're still going to have under what would be 72307, to have the license, they still have to comply with these regulations. So if they're operating from city property without that location permit, they're still in jeopardy of having their license suspended or revoked, or other penalties. And just I guess a question for clarification. I just want to make sure that I know what I would be drafting for next week. Councilmember Horniman, so we would just take out, I don't know if you have the proposed ordinance in front of you. It's 72305B is where the fee is. So we would be lining out the clause there that says and must pay in advance a fee of $25. We're just taking that portion out. Everything else would say. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reesner.
What was the context of the $25 fee back in 2000? Anybody know why it was put in there to begin with?
Yes, Councilmember Doherty.
If I may, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it was my understanding that it was just more of an administrative fee, if I could be right in saying that.
Just offset the time of the city administrator?
Exactly. That's my understanding of why that was put into place.
Councilmember Thacker.
We have a similar fee when it comes to vending for events or vending in public spaces. So every year when I do the festival, I have to fill out a permit for all of the businesses that are there, or they have to fill it out themselves. And so I fill it out for all of our businesses that show up at that festival. And so I think it's just a similar amount due to temporary vending. Right? Am I misunderstanding that?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I would say also along those lines is essentially you're leasing out city property for some kind of fee. Is probably a stronger reason why that 25 a week is in there. I think the $50 application is more of those administrative costs of.
Sure. Any, were you going to say something? Councilmember Thacker, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm on the fence, and I'll tell you why. If we change how we do, some of the other things that were brought up were potentially changing how we do some of the parking things. Maybe we have spots that are multi-use and not specific, to food trucks. And then the question comes up, okay, so if we do take into account how many spaces and how much space needs to be used for each truck, well, then we have to go out and mark those off, right? Then somebody has to, which again, not a big deal, but it does take time. It does cost something to the city to pay for signs. It does cost something to the city for the paperwork and technically somebody's time. So that's the only reason I'm on the fence about completely doing away with it. I had suggested as an alternate per permit so that if somebody were going for more than just 1 week, I know that's a whole separate issue, but that's the only reason I don't know how I'm going to vote, honestly, if this is the language that we choose.
Councilmember Herniman.
I mean, just to stay on the jumping through the hoops and stuff, I mean, I just laid out what they have to do to operate in the city. But they also, as far as they still have to get that declaration page for insurance for liability. They have to provide those certificates and stuff like that and pay for those and all that. I mean, they've gone through that. And if it's a fee and they file Tiffin city income tax, the city gets their money back, okay? I mean, that's just the way I think about it.
Councilmember Reesner, I think I speak first.
So the $50 goes to the fire department budget or whatever, and the 25 as it stands currently goes to the city administrator. Is that the
City Administrator.
No, not necessarily. They all just go to the general fund.
general fund? Okay. And that $50 hasn't risen in the last 5 years. So, okay, all right.
Councilmember Doherty, did you have something though?
I did. Thank you, Madam President. I certainly understand where Councilwoman Thacker's coming from. I just want to, I think when it comes to $25, I just want to make doing business in Tiffin as easy as possible for folks. And if we can make it easier for them, that's where I stand. And that's how I kind of feel about it.
Councilmember Herniman.
Very Close Community charges $100 for their permit every year.
I'm sorry, Ms. Horman, what was that?
An adjacent community charges $100 a year for their food truck permit, and we're at 50, so we're.
Any other discussion before we take a vote on this motion?
Yeah, I have some.
Councilmember Jones.
We just need to be careful because when you start eliminating fees for one thing, the next person's going to want that fee for this and then this fee. And then suddenly, guess what? everything's free. So just keep that in mind. When we make this decision, be prepared for the repercussions on other issues, because that will happen. Because I know if you took a fee away from someone else, I'm going to say, well, what about me? So just be prepared for that. I understand doing business in Tiffin, and I understand all those things you say, but if you're going to do business, you're going to do those things anyhow. Am I wrong? You got to get a license, you got to get a food service certificate, you got to be inspected by the health department. Whether you're a food truck or whether you're a restaurant, you're going to do that. And I'm not against anybody doing business. That's not what I'm saying. Just be very careful when you open up that box, because I believe it'll go into other things. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Councilmember Hayes.
Yeah, to me, I think we're making it very easy for me to turn on South Washington Street and see like 6 food trucks parked essentially permanently. There's really no like pushback from, for the city. When somebody says, oh, they've been parked there past week. And, it's like, well, at least we're charging a permit fee or at least something. But we've kind of slowly stripped away, the 100 feet from a business that does similar business. We've made it so not the property owner, it doesn't have to give consent, only the business owner. There's been other things that kind of, as we've gone through this process, we are making it easier for the food vendors, but I think we owe, more thought to other residents of Tiffin. I mean, we just talked about parking for 45 minutes before this council meeting. So I'm just kind of thinking, what does this do long-term for the city? And that kind of where my mind goes.
Law Director.
Yeah, kind of question the city administrator. What's, say 24, how many of the location permits have you had?
So for 2025, just so we're clear, I've had 2. One company twice has used City Lot 7. Sorry, Law Director, yeah, I might be able to pull that up pretty quickly here.
Is there other discussion while City Administrator's pulling that information up? Yes.
I would like to, I offered some options ahead of time for people to review, and I think potentially it is somewhere in the middle. One, I offered that we make it per permit so that somebody could come at the beginning of the month and they fill it out for the next month and then it's done, and it's not an every week having to add it to your to-do list. And 2, I offered up adding that a vendor who's selling products as part of the Heritage Festival, Farmers Market, Taste of Downtown Tiffin, or any other event be added back in. And I think that would, which is language that we currently have in our legislation. And I feel like that's kind of a happy medium, that if you're using one of these food truck spots for a specific purpose, if it's part of an event, you're taken care of, right? You're kind of, but if you're using it when it's not a regular, I should say the opposite, when it's regular time and you're utilizing that space to sell out of, I think maybe $25 per permit, whether that's a week, whether that's a month, takes care of it. And then the paperwork's done. You still have to fill out the permit if you're part of a festival or part of an event, but you're exempt from that fee because we're asking you to come in to be part of, something else, something bigger.
City Administrator, were you able to pull up that data?
I was. So we had 14 that were pulled last year. Now, some of those are for multi-week. Not to get too far into the weeds, the majority of those were for City Lot 7. We did have at least 2 for City Lot 5. We had quite a few that were for the T-Sup lot, the one that's near Ralph's Story of Living and the deli. We had no one pull from last year or the year before or this year for City Lot 6. And with that said, we did just remove that spot from the rotation because it has had such low usage. I will say that that's a spot that's probably easier to pull into than the other ones, but because it's not on Washington Street, does not get as much traffic as those other three. So it was determined that when we were restriping, we would take that out of the rotation.
Mayor.
I just want to throw out some information here. I did get food truck policies from 6 other cities, including Findlay, Bowling Green, Norwalk, Bell Fountain, Fostoria, and Fremont. And almost all of them have the permit fee, not the $25 permit fee, but their license fee for the city as $100. And very few, if any, I'm going to have to read this more carefully, have a weekly permit fee in addition to that.
Councilmember Reesner.
Well, that sort of satisfies what she was saying, to not come in every week, every month. You just make it for the whole year, season. But we just started the meeting saying we're not going to raise the fees too, so.
Where do we?
But I think that's a, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. Where do we currently sit on that, at $50? Is that what it is?
Right.
Yeah.
Councilmember Herniman, sorry.
My feedback and anything that I've said has come from multiple different people that are in this industry that run a mobile food vending unit. I'm not an expert. I went straight to the source and talked with them. And, anything that I'm gonna think is going through the ordinance with them and talking about changes, and that's their feedback and stuff. I mean, it's one of those where, like, if you want to look at it as the $25 fee and read, somehow the city's getting their money back. That, just so everyone's clear, that $25 fee is when you are operating, down the street and stuff. That's not just for the food truck parking spots. That's a $25 fee citywide if you're on city property. So I wanted to originally offer an amendment, and I was advised to keep it consistent. And it was going to be $25 for the food truck spots, and then waive the fee if you're not on that. I was told to be consistent and either waive the fee or don't. And so I decided to make a motion to waive the fee.
Councilmember Doherty.
In prior meetings, I was originally on board with the $25, but after hearing folks that actually do this for a living and hearing them speak, I haven't heard one person say they were in favor of the $25. So that's why I have changed my mind on the fact that I think, in my opinion, why I'm in favor of waiving it. There's not a single food vendor. I understand it's $25, but there's not a single food vendor that I've heard from here or privately that have been in favor of the $25. And again, I've said this and I'll say it again, but I just want to make it as easy to do business in Tiffin as possible. So I am in favor of waiving the $25.
Councilmember Snee.
I think it's a matter whether we have the permit fee or not have the permit fee. It comes down to enforcement of, laws. And if we don't have the permit fee, like some people, they slip in food vendors. Do you know, city administrator, how many people have come in or you've heard food vendors without a permit?
City Administrator.
That's gonna go up.
So
Enforcement.
what I can tell you is that I think there's a reference to in the evenings and late nights, we do see people set up without a permit. As much as I would love to be living here every minute of my life, I cannot be enforcing our spots 24/7.
I mean, the police department would be, wouldn't they?
And understandable for that. But they're also doing other things at the late hours. I can't speak to whether or not they're checking all of those. We have attempted to make some ways that all of us can, that more people can see who has a permit and who doesn't. It's hard to police the one or two folks who are doing this for a couple of hours on a Friday or Saturday night. It just quite frankly is. In the instances where we did have people setting up last year during the daytime hours that weren't following the rules, I would personally go and speak to them and let them know that they were either in the wrong spot or that they were operating without a license. And so, we would work on a warning system. If we had to, we could go back and to revoke their license in some cases. And there have been cases where we've had people set up that don't have a license, and when they were told that they needed to get licensed in order to be at those spots as well. So it is not a complete lack of enforcement, but yeah, in the late night hours, in the evenings, on the weekends, when I'm not here, those don't necessarily get enforced.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk too about if you guys were to waive, if council were to decide to waive this $25 fee, that all of a sudden there's going to be all these food trucks. I think there's still an opportunity from the data that the mayor has talked about, and Councilmember Thacker, I believe, has raised this as well, and we heard from Tina as well, is that the other cities have their application form as higher. And so perhaps there's something to consider there, is if you guys were to be in favor of waiving the $25 weekly fee, that perhaps there's a opportunity then to raise this other fee. And Councilmember Reesner, I know you mentioned, we said at the beginning of this that we weren't going to waive fees, but raise fees, but we also said we weren't going to waive them. So I think, discussion has happened, and I think there's some opportunities to consider some other possibilities here. So just my opinion, given the conversation. Is there any other discussion before we vote on this particular motion? Okay, can I ask the clerk to call the roll, please, on that?
Councilmember Doherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
No.
Sorry. Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
No.
Reesner.
No.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 4-3. Okay. Is there any other discussion on this ordinance, this particular item? Yes, Councilmember Thacker.
I would like to move to amend the same ordinance under 723.05 location, under number 2, under B2, I would like to amend it from restaurant to business.
Okay. There is a motion to amend, I believe I wrote this down wrong, so correct me, or right, but correct me if I got it wrong. Ordinance 25-54, particular section 723.05, the fee from restaurant to business. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Thacker.
I just think it opens up the possibility for different types of businesses. I was just trying to make it more open.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, can I ask the clerk to call the vote on that, please?
Councilmember Doherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Thacker.
I have more. I'd like to, I move to amend, sorry, my screen went dead. I move to amend 723.06 as part of this ordinance. B, we were given some prior possible legislation options. This is option 3 for the people that looked at it, but I will read what I wanted to say instead. Vending equipment or vehicles shall not be required to be removed at the conclusion of each vending day, provided the mobile food vendor holds a valid mobile food preparation vehicle vendor's location permit and intends to continue vending operations on a regular, ongoing basis. For the purposes of this section, a mobile food vendor shall be deemed to have an intent to continue operation if vending activity occurs with sufficient frequency to indicate ongoing commercial use of the location as determined by the city administrator. Occasional gaps in operation due to weather, equipment issues, personal circumstances, or other reasonable causes shall not alone be considered an abandonment of operation. In the event the mobile food vendor ceases operation for a continuous period exceeding 3 days, or the city administrator in their sole absolute discretion determines that the mobile food vendor no longer intends to continue vending at the permitted location, the mobile food vendor shall remove all vending equipment and vehicles from the site without delay.
So there's a motion to amend ordinance 25-54, 723.06B as described by Councilmember Thacker. Is there a second? Councilmember Horniman.
I second that. I was going to make a motion for that too.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to add to the discussion.
Sure.
The part of this that I have a problem with is the part where it says for a continuous period exceeding 3 days. So that potentially could lead to a food truck being in a location potentially on the street or in a parking lot that has not operated for 3 days and they continue to sit there. So what I don't want to have happen is unattended food trucks just sitting there for 3 continuous days, not in operation. This came from the optional language that Law Director Fowler provided for us, and that was option 3 as proposed by Councilman Thacker. Option 2 is very similar, but the 3 days is not part of option 2. I think that gives us more latitude to control the type of thing that I am fearful of having a food truck sitting in a spot, not in operation for multiple days at a time. I don't mind them sitting for multiple days at a time if they are going to be in operation all those days. And I understand that there will be issues with weather and equipment and things like that that may cause them to be non-operational, but a continuous 3-day period, I think, is beyond what is reasonable for that.
Thank you. Other discussion?
The one part that I've kind of been over in that, and I agree with the mayor, option 2 really was my favorite, but if I'm going to talk about ease of doing business and doing that, then the option 3 that we're looking at, where I get a little bit of a hang up, and just based on getting feedback and talking with people and that do run the industry and everything is, that wording of sole and absolute discretion. I mean, that is what it says there for the city administrator. I mean, there has to be some sort of appeal process or something, or that they can do, I mean, but I do agree with the mayor also with I want them to be able to operate multiple days in a location, but they cannot sit out there indeterminately and just say, oh, we just decided not to. There has to be something that is more well-defined and not so broad and such.
Law Director?
Yeah. So there is. So under 72307C, I made sure to include a right to appeal any decision, right? So if somebody doesn't agree with the city administrator's interpretation, they could appeal. Where does that go? There's no real appellate body for this, like say zoning. There's a Board of Zoning Appeals, for example. So really they would bring that here to council, and then council can hear their concerns and make a decision Otherwise, if they really wanted to, there's an appellate process goes to the Court of Common Pleas for administrative appeals. So that's there. We could flush that out more. You could say that, make it clear that any appeals comes to City Council. But there is relief for someone. And it's just to answer back on the 3 days, there's an or there. So it's either the 3 days or the city administrator finds that they're not operating. That could be less than 3 days. So let's say they do take out a permit and they intend to be there for a week on the application, and it's day 8 and they're still there. I think at that point, the city administrator could infer they're not to be there and ask them to leave.
Helpful, thank you. Yeah. Councilmember Thacker.
I just want to give you a little reasoning why I kind of went with this one about the others. For me, I feel like life is tricky and odd and deeply uncomfortable sometimes. And there are circumstances that we do not yet know or can account for a person. And I think having some human discretion adds an opportunity for weird, odd, uncomfortable situations. That's thing one. Thing two, I find Nick to be deeply reasonable. I would hope that future city administrators would be deeply reasonable, and if not, that future body would deal with whoever that person is and have them removed. And so I think having some discretion with the city administrator, we do it in so many other different laws already on the books. That's part of it. The last part of it, we had heard a lot from Jamie at the last meeting about this stress. And it's not for Jamie, but I think about other people that have interesting and different circumstances. I just think it adds a human factor to it. And I also don't suspect that if we have 6 food trucks, that's the number I heard earlier, so that's why I chose it, lining the streets of Tiffin and none of them are operating and they're just sitting there, that Nick could use his discretion to say, this is a problem on a case-by-case basis. So I just think it gives a little grace to the food trucks.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we vote on this? All right, seeing none, can I ask the clerk to call the vote, please?
Councilmember Doherty.
No.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
No.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 5-2. Thank you. Any other discussion on ordinance 25-54? Councilmember Thacker.
I have just one more for this evening. Under 2503 location, C1, I just thought it might be, I've heard, never mind. I move to change the hours of operation to be in line with 7/23/06, so 6:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., except Sundays when vending must end by midnight.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion to amend ordinance 25-54 regarding the hours of operation to align with 7/23/06 hours, which are 6:30 a.m. to, I can't read my handwriting, apologies.
Oh, the hours.
Is it 2:30?
It's vending may only be conducted between the hours of 6:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. except Sundays when vending must end by midnight. So I would strike what's currently there, no mobile food vendor, to the end, and replace it with that language.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that, Madam President.
Councilmember Doherty, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll tell you why I'm leaning this way. I think if we can make it as clear as possible, and also one of the things that was brought up was something like a graduation party or a wedding. And I know a lot of people are kind of moving into this new scenario where they'll have late night food options, and what is more late night food option than a food truck? So I just think it offers some flexibility. One of the things that I heard, maybe not in support of it, and I want to address that now, was that, okay, well, there might be noise issues. Well, we already have an ordinance regarding noise complaints, and so if there is a noise complaint, there is an issue, I think it would be dealt with under that same issue, that same ordinance.
Thank you. Councilmember Herdeman.
Would that remove the residential, like 10 o'clock cutoff and everything? So like all food trucks are able to operate from 6:30 to 2:30 a.m.
Except
citywide
Sundays.
and stuff, whether they're in, zone commercial areas or residential, that would just be, is that?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Any other discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, for my own clarification, if I'm reading this correctly, we have to authorize a permit for a single-family residence beforehand. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion before we vote? All right, seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the vote, please.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Motion carries, a vote to 7-0. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on ordinance 25-54? Councilmember Herdeman.
Thank you, Madam President. Sorry, everyone. I would like to make a motion to amend ordinance 25-54 to have a 300-foot radius to not operate near a restaurant or business that sells similar products or specializes in similar cuisine unless part of a festival, event, or farmer's market.
There is a motion to amend ordinance 25-54 regarding the radius to not operate next to a similar business, additionally as what you described. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, if there's no second, the motion dies. Any other discussion on ordinance 25-54? City Administrator.
Maybe a question for the law director, if I'm even allowed to suggest this. In the current ordinance, we removed an exemption for events. That should probably be added back in. What that exemption will be for is for the permit, the location permit only. So any event that would go on in the downtown district would be, if there's an event that includes food trucks, be that the Heritage Festival, something put on by downtown Tiffin, they would be designating the space where those trucks would operate. They're still required to have the event, the license, the $50 license. They're just not required to have the location permit. Fee or no fee, that's just not required of them.
Councilmember Thacker.
I'm in favor of amending it. I had that initially in my suggestions, but I figured because there was no fee, what does it matter in terms of whether or not they actually fill out a permit or not? But I can see what you're saying.
So, sorry, just to make sure, before that motion happens, you're saying that it removes the permit, not the license, for someone participating in an event?
That is correct.
Got it.
The way this, I think one of the best things this legislation currently has in it is that any vendor is required to have a license, whether they're operating on public property, private property, part of an event or not. They must be licensed, they must have their food inspection, they must have their fire inspection. So 100% agree, they need to have that license. But rather than have to worry about all of those trucks getting a permit, if they are part of the event going on, they're exempt from getting the permit, the location permit.
Got it.
And I can't make that motion.
Right,
so.
right.
Council doesn't like that idea, that's fine.
Sorry, Councilmember Reesner.
Now I'll make the motion for said comments that.
Echo the city administrator.
So there's a motion to amend ordinance 25-54 for a vendor who is participating in a event would be exempt from having to be required to have a permit. Is there a second? Councilmember Snee.
I would like to second that motion, Madam President.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Law Director.
Yeah, just for kind of drafting clarification. So the current exemption is that under 72302 is they're exempted from any of the license requirements and the regulations. And then what was being proposed that didn't make through law and community was to exempt them from the overall license fee, but they were still obligated to follow the regulations. So for this is like that, but this is just for the location permit fee. They're still going to be required to follow, get the regular permit, follow the regulations. It's just, they don't need the location permit because a lot of times these special events are on a city street or parking lot. Am I following your logic? Okay. All right.
Any other discussion? Yes, Councilmember Thacker.
I just have a suggested spot. I added it as 3
Yeah.
under that same location section.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, if I can ask the clerk to call the vote, please.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Any other discussion on ordinance 25-54? Okay. We can move on.
Promise?
The meeting's starting to make me hungry.
Ordinance number 2025-55, introduced by Kevin Reesner, an ordinance amending the 2025 budget ordinance 24-94 to appropriate funds into the Finance Department budget.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 25-55. Councilmember Reesner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for immediate passage of ordinance 2025-55, suspending city council's reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 25-55. Is there a second? Councilmember Thacker.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Reesner.
This is a $8,000 amount for the finance budget. It is for refunds dealing with ambulance payments to Medicom.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we can first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
And Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We can now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-55 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 2025-56, introduced by John Hayes, an ordinance amending Section 2 of Ordinance 2025-4, the amended city pay ordinance, to create and fund the community service/diversion officer position for the Tiffin Fostoria Municipal Court and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading of ordinance 25-56. Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, I'd like the motion for immediate passage of ordinance 2025-56, suspending council's 3 reading rule.
Thank you. There's a motion for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 25-56. Is there a second? Councilmember
I'll
Herniman.
second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
Yes, this is for the creation of a part-time community service/diversion officer with the Tiffin Municipal Court. And the funding for 2025 for this position is already earmarked in this year's budget.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we can first vote on the suspension.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
Thacker.
Yes.
Emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilmember Dougherty.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horniman.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Reesner.
Yes.
Snee.
Yes.
And Thacker.
Yes.
Ordinance 25-56 passes with a vote of 7-0.
And that concludes the legislation.
Right, we are now under other business. Councilmember Snee.
Yes, Madam President. I'd like to announce a Recreation and Public Property Committee meeting. It'll be June 23rd at 5:15 PM here in the City Council chambers to discuss Mayor's request for 25-32 and 33.
Thank you.
And any other business that may become before the committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Thacker.
I'd just like to confirm with Street Sidewalk Sewers that nobody is requesting a hearing for our 2 notices from Ohio Division of Liquor Control. Is that correct? Cool. Okay, then I will ask the clerk to send our response with no request for hearing.
Thank you. Any other business before council this evening? Okay, thank you. We can adjourn.
What did I miss while I was out?
Bridget, you look
Got to move
exhausted.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Bridget.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Never leaving again, apparently.
We'd still be on the